going to visit someone who's going to tell us all about stuff about writing. And I know everybody knows everything there is to know about writing, but I think that you'll be surprised at what we don't know and why having somebody who is a professional do it for us can be really helpful. But first, I have to talk to my friend Nathan. How are you, sir?
Hey there, Kevin. Excited for today's show. Being a recent college graduate, I mean, it gets further and further the more it comes. Writing was very important when writing research, and I'm probably about to find out I did everything wrong.
Well, and that's one of the things we like to do here is to educate people as well as entertain them. And sometimes we need people to teach us how to write properly and how to get the best bang for our buck, whether it's on Facebook or it's copyrighted material or it's your own book. If you have a desire to write a book, it really is interesting to be able to talk to somebody who actually knows what they're talking about.
And in the end, everything, for the most part, involves writing in some way or another because you have to plan it out ahead of time and make a plan. That all comes based off of writing.
Yes. Now, you just got graduated from college. So what did you majored in broadcasting, right?
Something like that. There's like a sort of create your own degree program. It's called an interdisciplinary concentration. So you kind of pick and choose the courses that you want and make a degree out of it. So I did a lot of like media production and audio and communications journalism and stuff like that.
I don't know that I've ever asked you. So how are you going to apply your education going forward? Are you going to become a big time disc jockey or a talk show host? What are you going to do?
Probably I'll end up being a bus driver.
It's interesting that you say that because when Anja was here last time, or when we talked last time, and I said, well, how should I present Positive Talk Radio? And she said, well, you were a bus driver for a long time, right? And I said, well, yeah. And she said, well, you should incorporate that into your slogan. And I said, that's brilliant. That's simply brilliant. I had no idea. So this is Positive Talk Radio. Get on the bus. Let's go for a ride. And so I think that'll work. I'm not sure, but I'd like to introduce her to us because she's a copywriter and she does copy for people for Facebook and for social media and commercials and all of that. And she does it in a way that the word, I've never heard this term before, but she uses the words that attack the same center of the brain like a great meal and a glass of wine. So it makes you feel good about the words that you are that are coming, that you're seeing on print. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And so with that, without further ado, here's Anja Geitz.
Hi, Kevin. Hi, Nathan. It's great to be here. What a wonderful intro. I was like, wow, who is that person that they're talking about? And it was like, oh, it's me.
It is you. It is you. And how is it that, because I've been reading your bio, and by the way, if you want to go check her out, you can go to AnjaProWriter.com and you can hire her to write copy for you and to do the types of things that like I do a lot of writing because I have to, but I don't know whether I'm good at it or not. But it would be nice to have a professional review my material to make sure that we're actually saying what we're trying to say.
And I should just mention really quick, for those of you that are listening to the show and not watching the video and able to see Anja's name, her first name is spelled Anja.
Yes.
And
my mother wanted to make it interesting.
And she did. So before we begin, Nathan, I just wanted to tell everybody what we're doing this year that is different than what we did with KKNW last year.
Sure. If what I just said sparked some curiosity in you, what I just mentioned was that we are now broadcasting the Positive Talk Radio Monday, Wednesday, Friday KKNW shows all to social media and video channels. So we got it going to the KKNW YouTube and Facebook. Also the Positive Talk Radio Positive Talk Radio YouTube and Facebook. And you can also go to 1150kknw.com. Makes it really easy to pull it up. If you just scroll down a little bit, you'll see a watch online button. Go ahead and click that. Brings you right over to the KKNW live video stream.
So we are kind of like all over the place now. And so if you go to any of these streams, you will be able to watch us live as we do the show. It really is. It's an engaging way to do it. And it's kind of the next level of what's going to be happening in the industry, I think.
And it also means that Kevin has to comb his hair.
That does. No, I don't. if I had hair, would have to comb it. But actually, what I'm using is a stunt double. I want people. I don't want people to know what I really look like. So the fool that's on the screen now is not me, because everybody has an idea of what when they hear somebody's voice, and Anja, I know you've done this too. When you hear a radio voice, you in your mind think of what that person looks like.
Absolutely.
And they never look like you think they should look like. Have you noticed that?
Well, I don't know if I say should, but it is an interesting phenomena. I mean, I think one of the voices that you can do that with, but although he's on television, if you closed your eyes, like for the show Frasier and Kelsey Grammer, it was years before I knew that he sang the theme song, because I didn't place what I visually saw of him with the voice. He has a very good singing voice, so it was kind of funny.
There was another guy. His name was Jim Neighbors.
Gosh, yeah. Well, you're dating yourself, Kevin. You are dating yourself.
I'm dating myself because nobody else will date me. But
okay.
Careful, Kevin.
I know.
Jim Neighbors, yes, he had a beautiful voice, a singing voice.
He played Gomer Pyle on Gomer Pyle on Mayberry, and then his own show. But he had a beautiful baritone singing voice that it was like that can't be coming out of his face.
Yeah, I can't be coming out of right.
Golly, that's Gomer Pyle. And speaking of dating myself, I was thinking in preparation for this show, do you remember the Dick Van Dyke Show?
I do. In fact, I have a little story about that. My mother, who was a German immigrant, they moved in 1957 to Canada, and my dad was a chef. And so my mom was taking care of me as a baby, and she didn't really know a lot of English. And so she stayed home and she learned English by watching American television. And one of her favorite shows was Dick Van Dyke. And so my mom's view of the world was Dick Van Dyke. That's kind of how she wanted to be Laura Petrie. So that was very prevalent in my house. So, I mean, I'm sorry to do an exposition there, but
no,
yeah,
that's
I'm very familiar with Dick Van Dyke.
And the reason I bring him up is because in the Dick Van Dyke Show, he and Sally and Buddy were writers for Carl
Reiner show. They were comedy writers.
They were comedy writers, but
right.
I grew up not even understanding or knowing, because all they did is sit in a room and crack jokes at each other all day. and so I think
process, right?
I guess, but it was like I didn't recognize what a writer was, or that it was an important aspect of the show, because they're the ones who put the words into Carl Reiner's mouth for him to say. And it was really, really an important job, because that's and when you look at the late night guys and stuff, they all have teams of writers, like as many as 10 or 15.
Yeah. I mean, I always, even as a young girl, when I would watch some of my favorite shows, I would always wish that I was backstage when they had done the table reading, like when all the actors were seeing the script for the first time. And I would imagine that, I always imagined in my mind that was really a fun part of the writing process. Now, that's the end part. That's not the actual, you got to get it on the page. That's not the fun part. The fun part's in, okay, now you've got it on the page and everybody's reading it. So.
Yes. And I talked to a screenwriter recently, And she said, I didn't like being a screenwriter because I would write something and I thought it was really good. And then the
Oh,
director would
yeah,
come along and say, well, it's really good, except can you change this, this, and this? And then the
yeah,
producer would come along and say, this is pretty good, but could you do this, this, and this? And so it became not her project anymore. It became,
yeah.
it
A
became,
collaboration of sorts.
yes, but she ended up feeling like she was lost in the process.
Yeah, yeah.
So that makes it tough. But you are a copywriter, and and I wanted to ask you about that because I don't know anything. I know that it's important to copyright some materials, and you
Right.
do that with the government, but I don't know how the process works. What should you copyright? What is in the public domain? There's that word that I learned recently,
Right.
in the public domain, and what's the difference between them all? Can you explain some of that?
Copywriting is basically what there's a quote by a copywriter, uh, uh, Judith Martin, and she basically said that a copywriter is a salesperson. Well, she's behind a typewriter, but let's update that and say, a keyboard. And basically, that's what you're doing. So it really kind of depends on if you are selling a product, or you're selling a person, or you're selling a service. Now, I do a lot of business to business. So I don't do necessarily a lot of copywriting for products. I do copywriting for uh, services and people, um, some products too. And it really kind of, all writing begins with research. And so you have to, when I get a new client on board, I do an onboarding process where I start asking them questions about their service, their products, who is it that they're trying to reach, really understanding the people that are in need of the service. And I think that part is the key part in any writing project, is the research end of it.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah. So, I mean, because you don't know what you don't know. So you can't just like sit in front of, the keyboard and start writing when you don't really know who you're writing to. So understanding your audience is probably key.
Well, I
Definitely.
wanted to ask you now, Positive Talk Radio or any other podcast or radio show, should the name itself be registered with the government as far as being copywritten, or being your
Yeah,
independent?
I don't want to give any expert advice on that one, because I don't know the laws on that. That's kind of something entirely like different than what it is that I do. There is, you mentioned public domain, so there is that, and there's a lot of uh, concern and talk about taking other people's writing and kind of changing it just enough to make it your own. And where's the ethical part of that, or the legal part of that? So that's kind of questions out of my like wheelhouse. So I have my own ideas of what I do, and it works for me, but it's not something that I feel really comfortable saying, oh, well, this is the way it is. So I'm not really too sure, Kevin.
Well, the copyright laws of the United States could probably fit in the back of a Volkswagen, because they're thousands and thousands of pages long. And,
Yes,
and
yes.
so you really almost need to be a corporate lawyer in order to determine what should be copywritten and that kind of thing, and they can be expensive.
Yeah. That's like, that's pretty, it's pretty dense. Uh, exactly, what all the laws are. So, that's definitely not in my purview. I'm not a lawyer. That is, that's very,
Well,
um,
and thank God
dense,
for
dense writing. And thank goodness there are people there that, can parse that out. That's, like I said, not exactly in my wheelhouse.
But what you do is what you do you have do what you do is you do website copy, social media, print copy,
Right.
all things that are important. And I love what you said in on your website, which is like it's like a it you write information that centers in the part of the brain that's like a good meal,
Ah,
glass of wine.
yes.
So
Yes.
it's pleasant and it's pleasing, and people enjoy reading it. And that's a real skill. Not a lot of people have that.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about that is, especially if you're writing to an audience where you're trying to persuade them to purchase something or engage in some way, I mean, you have basically less than 30 seconds to attract their attention. You know what I'm saying? So your first sentence better say something. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you're not writing. It's very different from, academic, when you were in school and you were writing a paper. I mean, it was graded and your teacher was forced to read it. So when you are, in the art of persuasion, you have to approach it in a very different way. And so I think the things that are most memorable is not so much what you said, is how you made the reader feel while they were reading it. And I did the comparison to wine and food because I blog about wine and food. And so that's kind of my little hobby. I like to cook, I like to entertain. So that was the reason why I chose that particular comparison.
Now, if they want to go look at your blog and look at the things that you've written, how do they get to the blog?
Yeah, I'm on Medium, and the last blog post that I wrote up there was an experience that I had when I was living in New York City, and I was working down in Little Italy at a pastry shop, and John Gotti used to come in with his associates, and I would eavesdrop on their some of their conversations, and they would talk about restaurants. I mean, most of it was in Italian, and I was studying Italian at the time, but this was more of a dialect. But I could pick out like the names of restaurants that they would talk about, like all across the 5 boroughs. And I started making a collection, and I started visiting these restaurants, and I call it my Goodfellas tour. I mean, at the time, I didn't know it was John Gotti because I didn't know. I mean, I was like, 23 years old. I had no idea. I just thought it was, an eccentric Italian flamboyant businessman because he dressed really nice and everything. And so I wrote I wrote a blog. I wrote a little story about my adventures on these like these restaurant, like you got the pub crawl, and now that was my restaurant crawl. Um, so that's the latest one on Medium. That was a lot of fun to write. A lot of fun to remember my days back in New York.
Now I have to ask you because and he I believe has passed on now. Um, I believe, but
Yeah.
doesn't matter anyway. But in like Goodfellas and The Godfather and stuff, we get a certain idea of what the gangster types were like, and they spend a lot of times in restaurants.
Yeah.
Is that kind of how they were really like, or was it different than that?
Well, each of the restaurants that I went to, I was more like focusing on the actual like food, and plus I didn't really know what was going on until like much later. And so, I mean, it was kind of like these familial ties. And you would go in and everybody was very friendly to me, but they were a little baffled, but not because I wasn't from the neighborhood. It was more because I was dining alone.
Ah,
um, the Italians and many other European cultures, I think the French, I mean Greece and just a lot of European cultures. You eat with people, and when I would travel to Italy and I was studying there and I would eat alone, the waiter or the proprietor would always, ask me, "Perché mangiare da sola? Why are you eating alone?" And they would try to pair me with people. And so that was more the why are you? And then, I was young. I was this young girl, kind of on my own, learning New York with the subway map. And I'd come into these restaurants and they'd be like, how did you hear about this? And I didn't really want to tell them how I heard about it. So I just said, oh, I was just exploring New York. So I saw your restaurant and I thought I'd just walk in. So it was more, they were surprised that I was all alone. So they would try to pair me. There was this one restaurant in Brooklyn that I used to go to, like Williamsburg, before Williamsburg became very trendy. And I would go there like once a week on the weekend, and they got to know me. And so they would pair me with their family, like their family coming in from Italy, but my Italian wasn't that great. And so we would have these conversations where I was just basically the village idiot. But I was with people, I was with people. And so that's what I wrote about, that, just the adventures.
How did you become a writer? I mean, is this something that you've done your entire life? Is it
Yeah, kind of, but it's interesting because I didn't actually start to decide to make a living out of it until the pandemic. I mean, it was something that I'd always done. My sister said that she remembers watching me like at 8 years old, sitting in front of my father's typewriter, wearing these like frames of glasses that didn't have the lenses in, and typing away, because I guess I thought at 8 that writers were really smart. And that was kind of, and my parents were readers. I mean, they may not have had a collected work of Shakespeare. My mother was more an Agatha Christie, but she didn't have to tell me to read because she was always reading. And she always gave an importance to reading. I mean, even though she didn't have a lot of money, and she basically put a bookshelf together from like 2x4s and bricks and then painted it. She would always make sure I had books. When the school scholastic catalog came in, she would spend her budgeted money on books. So it was this very real lesson that, she valued this. And we had quiet time, and she was in her bedroom and she was reading, and I had a bookshelf and I was reading. And from reading became writing. And I was the best apology writer. I would write apologies to my mother and get out of scrapes you wouldn't believe, because I wrote and she saved them all. And when she passed away, oh my God, she'd saved all my little apology notes, So, and I was the friend who would always write essays for classmates. I would be the one that had to write a hard letter to a government official, or so I was always the go-to. And I was always writing stories. On the typewriter, my own little stories. I loved, when I was young, my mother had taken me to Gone with the Wind, and I decided, well, I'm going to write a story like Gone with the Wind. So when I was 11 years old, I wrote 200 pages of this derivative Gone with the Wind story, but my version of it. So it was just something that I always did. And then I found myself in a situation where I was working for a trade association in New York City for property managers. And I ended up, it was a small organization, and they had a monthly trade publication. And I ended up being the editor, but I also ended up doing a lot of the ghostwriting for the board members. And I would do the ad copy for the advertisers So it just kind of came naturally to me. And yeah, during the pandemic, everything kind of shifted, everything changed. I lost my job, and it was like, well, this is what I have been doing, because I had been blogging just for myself. And I had some connections, and I just started charging people.
Well, it's a value, and it's got a lot of value to it. So I wanted to ask you, if there's a small business owner who is listening to the show, what are you able to look at their material and then to determine what would be a great way to present their material that they may not be doing now, that can actually change the course of what their business is doing and the amount of volume it's doing?
Yeah. Usually when people come to me, they have a specific area that they want to improve. Or sometimes they just want to add content to something. And then I have a series of, like I say, interviews with them to find out exactly what it is that they're trying to achieve. And then we kind of go from there. So it really kind of depends on what their goals are. A lot of times people, especially entrepreneurs, do not have the time to do all the writing themselves.
It is.
And so,
I can tell you it's very difficult when you are like I do anywhere from 5 to 10 podcasts a week. I have to set them up. I have to get them all ready to go. I don't have a great deal of time to be ferreting out and mining, good copy of everything that I should be doing. So sometimes it doesn't look as good as it could. And it would be much better if I were to. So we need to talk after the show.
yes. Well, it's really all about the goal. It's sort of like, what is your goal? What is it that you want to achieve? And then the writing is geared towards achieving that. So, I mean, it's much more than just, is something grammatically. I mean, anybody can go in and I can go in and I can clean up, anything grammatical or whatever. But if you do not have a goal in mind, the writing's really not going to work for you. I mean, the way it could on the page. You kind of want it to earn its real estate on the page in that sense. So it really kind of all boils down to asking the questions of, what is it that you want to achieve with this? And everybody's goals are different. So, and that's that's one of the fun parts about new projects, because you get to, meet new people and learn about new businesses. And it's very social. I mean, the writing part isn't very social, and you work alone. But the meeting a new project is, it's always very it's a creative process. So that can be the fun process. I mean, sometimes it's not, because sometimes people don't really know what their goals are, and so that's harder, and it takes another level of me trying to get that out of them, and sometimes that doesn't happen the first time. I mean, I've had sessions where I had this one wonderful woman who wanted me to update her website. She had been working for, 20 years in a particular industry, and now she was fine-tuning it for the next part of however long she was going to be working. And so she wanted a complete revamp on her website. And she never told me, because she wanted to do a little story about herself. She wanted to part of the introduction. But it took 3 sessions to finally find out. And I was working with a web designer who I collaborate with, and he got all these really wonderful pictures on. I said, "Oh my God, I love the artwork that you curated." And he goes, "Oh no, it was hers." And I go, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Oh no, she likes to do amateur photography on all the travels that she does." And when I did that never came out. So it was wonderful, because what we ended up doing is we ended up taking that whole idea of her kind of being, this traveler, right? And, searching for things, looking at things with a critical eye under the camera, with what she does with her work when she has to audit things. And the website looked great, but then the story just kind of really fit in. So sometimes the client doesn't really know, and then it's more a process. It's a discovery process. But then once we hit it, then everything flowed, and that's always fun, when everything kind of coalesces between, the client's story and, the work that I'm doing, whether it's, a website, or it's copy for an ad, or just print work.
Well, I'm about ready to play a couple of ads that we created, and I'm a little apprehensive about letting you hear them, because I want to make sure that they're
Well, now you're making me apprehensive.
because I would like your opinion. By the way, we are talking with Anja Geitz, and go to Anja Pro to find out all the information about her. We're going to take just a quick break. It's just 2 minutes, it's real quick. But I want Anja to listen to it so that she can critique how well we're doing and if it makes any sense at all. And
no.
with that, yeah. So now we're both on the spot. So you're listening to Positive Talk Radio on KKNW 1150 AM, and we will be right back after these very short, and hopefully very informative commercials. Hey there. I'm excited that you're listening right now, and if you like what we're doing here, you're going to love positivetalkradio.net. On positivetalkradio.net, each show, which is recorded live, is packed with positive information, with real people discussing real issues, and positive solutions that can work for everyone. I hope that you'll join us on positivetalkradio.net and listen to all 340 plus shows. I think it's worth your time. But then, that's just me. That's positivetalkradio.net, your home for great progressive, positive podcasts.
When you want to say more than words communicate, you can with flowers. Your custom boutique floral studio in Bothell, Washington is anaturaldesign.com, connecting you to nature through the language of flowers. Where your people are is where our flowers are beautiful. Your success is our goal. anaturaldesign.com at your fingertips today.
Hey, my friend. I'd really like to thank you for listening to the show today. As you may know, I started Positive Talk Radio way back in 2003. We were one of the first shows on KKNW. For 11 months, I was fortunate to be part of many lives, making a positive difference with great interviews and discussions, creating new thoughts and ideas. Sadly, for financial reasons, I had to terminate the show. Well, it took 18 years, but we're back better than ever. And not only on KKNW Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, but also podcasting with several inspiring channels with the same driving passion as the original. Please visit kmmedia.pro for complete information about all of these shows. In addition, if you feel called to keep positive programming on the air, you can join us by sponsoring the show and aligning yourself with our mission, which is nothing short of saving the planet and each other. Again, that's kmmedia.pro. I'll see you there. And welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. It's Friday. I hope everybody's ready for a good weekend. It's Friday, and I hope everybody has a great afternoon. I hope you don't have to work too hard and can get it done. And I'm going to ask Anja now, you paid attention, and I saw you paying attention. What did you think?
I liked the tagline, evolving ideas, one conversation at a time.
Thank you. That wasn't mine. An associate came up with that.
Okay. I liked it.
Okay. Okay. Well, she's not going to say too much, but that's we can have a conversation after the show, and stuff. But and it's it really is hard, especially when you're very close to the work that you're doing, to be able to step back from it and write something that really will be impactful that you may not even have thought of. It's like when the last time that we talked and you said, and I said, well, what should I incorporate? And she said, well, you drove a bus, right? And I said, well, yeah. Well, you're a bus driver. Drive the Positive Talk Radio bus. And I thought that was brilliant. And
also I wanted to say, when I was watching the commercials, telling stories about how you had said, I was the first one, and then it took 17 years, and now I'm back. That piqued my interest, and it's like, oh, okay, there's a story there. So stories are a wonderful way to tell your story, but also get your audience engaged and position yourself in a way that I think accurately portrays who you are, who your business is, and what makes you different from the other the other businesses out there that are doing the same thing that you are. So how you did the story part, was that yours?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good. I like that. And it was very colorful, and it was, very, the other commercials in there, were very colorful and, very professional looking. I mean, I'm going to be honest, and I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't know I was supposed to be paying attention to those commercials. I thought you were going to be saying, oh, well, we did this, and then we talk about it. So, I have my cat here. That's one of the things about doing, Zoom meetings and broadcasting at home, because you're at home, and I have my cat here, and, he did not like his breakfast, and so he is being very demanding right now. So he was distracting me. So I am so sorry.
Oh, don't be at all. Cats.
I got it in the tail. I mean, I was like listening, right? I was listening, but I wasn't in my critique mode of, I have to critique this. So
well,
if we go to another commercial break, I make sure to pay attention to that round.
Well, sorry, we're not going to do that, but because that was it. That was it for today. But how's your cat? Everybody wants to know.
Well, that's what I did. I got up and I poured him some food so he would stop bothering me, because otherwise you'd be hearing meows in the background, because he thinks he's starving, but he's a little fatty. And he's not starving.
Yeah, you got to spend your time doing something, and if he's looking forward to eating all the time,
Well, we try to have. I have a garden, so I let him out in the garden, and he doesn't stray too far. So he likes to catch lizards. He likes to bring them back in, which isn't so lovely. But he's got his amusement, so it's not. We try to make it so he's not always just eating, but he is a little fatty.
There are lizards where you are?
There are, in fact, lizards, and thank God it's only lizards, and it's not any other kind of furry creature. Although he did bring in, when I first moved in here, he did bring in a mole, and I had to get a neighbor to help me move an entire bookshelf, because the mole had situated themselves behind the bookshelf. And moles have very distinctive. I didn't know this because I'm a city girl. Have very distinctive coloring. And they don't look like mice or rats, because I've seen those when I lived in New York. But the little fellow was pretty scared. So, we are very careful when we open up the door and let Ziggy walk back in. Just make sure we know what's in his mouth.
So, did you then let the mole go?
Oh yeah, no, I let the mole go. Yeah, because I have.
And your kitty was like, what? I went through all the trouble to bring that in.
I mean, he wasn't mortally injured. Right. It was for naught. Well, I had to put him in another room, because he would have been right in our face the whole time.
It's his live toy that you were taking away from him. Yeah. And he worked really hard for that.
Yeah, cats are still wild in that sense. I mean, they're domesticated, but never truly, because they are hunters.
Well, we had a cat that he would eat half of whatever it was and bring the other half home.
Lord, Kevin.
I'm not kidding. He would, and it was like he would lay it down as an offering before us.
Yes, well, that's what they do, because you're the head in their little lion's pride. You're the head honcho. So he was presenting you with his offerings.
Yes, and it was almost like, I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. I had to eat some of it, but here's the rest. That's for you.
I one time Ziggy brought in a lizard that was alive and ran away, and I couldn't find it until I did, and then it had rolled up, mortally injured inside my yoga mat, and I was doing an online yoga class with other people, and I rolled out the map, and people could hear me go, "Oh my God!" because it was not good.
Oh well, those things happen. Happen. By the way, we're talking with Anja Geitz, and she is a copywriter. She works with people working with their Facebook page, their Facebook presentation. It's interesting. Do you find these days that everybody is writing something because they're either doing it on Instagram or they're doing it
Oh yeah.
on Facebook, and they've got their portfolio and they're putting all this stuff together. It's got to be, it's hard for a lot of us because we don't have the skills that it takes to be a professional writer, and so a lot of times it comes off as being less than a really good presentation if we do it ourselves, rather than, especially there are CEOs who they're too busy, they don't have the time, they do other stuff,
Right.
and they generally employ people to write for them, and
Right.
you were one of those at one time.
Well, I used to.
You were a ghostwriter for some of the folks.
Yeah, I was a ghostwriter for board members for their monthly message to the readers. And that's always interesting because it's one thing to write about somebody's ideas, but you definitely want to write in their voice as well. I have a very distinctive voice when I'm writing just for me. You know what I'm saying? And you can even tell it in some of the copy, and either the client will be on board with that voice or not. It really kind of depends. I mean, if you're writing for somebody in fashion, like I write for a handbag company, that's going to be a different voice than if I wrote for a doctor. Copy for, I just finished some posters. And he wanted seasonal, for each season, he wanted a message, and he wanted to incorporate living better. He's an audiologist for hearing. And so he wanted to do something like that. But I didn't want to make it too salesy because it was in his office and it was accompanied by some nice artwork. So I wanted to kind of tell a little story. So, voices are very important, which I'm going to bring up a whole other subject that could probably take a whole entire podcast. But now that we're seeing AI out there, and there's some really great programs, and I've been kind of experimenting with them, people's writing is going to improve in one way and not in another. And so it'll be really interesting to see, because it'll help with the grammatical structure, with the AI. But when we talk about voice, it's going to, I really feel like, I'll have to wait and see how much better it gets. But the voice is going to be a question, because I'm like kind of wondering if that's just going to be a very bland, everybody sounds the same, because.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've been working with AI. By the way,
Yeah.
if you don't know what that is, that's artificial intelligence. And there are now, and correct me if I'm wrong, Anja, but there are now programs that you can type in a question.
Yes.
And it will answer the question with everything that's out there on the web.
Yeah.
It searches everything,
Yeah.
and it comes up with a really interesting answer.
Yeah, no, they're very powerful. They're very, and it's going to change. I mean, there are a lot of writers who are very nervous and saying, oh, is that going to eliminate our jobs? I think for the good writers who do have a voice and do have like a vision in their writing, I mean, for blogs that need just content out there, it's going to be easier for people rather than use a content mill. But there's still always going to be a need for a good writers out there who understand the audience, because AI is not going to, like we talked before, you're speaking to an audience, you're trying to persuade them, or you're trying to engage them, and we're going to start to notice. And this will be really interesting, because people don't really pay attention to writing unless they are writers or they're readers, maybe on a conscious level. But I think on a subconscious level, if you gave somebody an example of something written one way and something written another, they might not be able to articulate what the differences are, but they'll feel the differences. I mean, everybody's writing and thinking is different, and that comes out that way. And then if we just homogenize it through AI, I mean, it'll just be really interesting to see if people start to notice that. So it's a new frontier. It's a brave new world there.
And so I would guess that if you are a programmer for AI, that in order to catch the voice, and let's talk about voice for a second, because what you're
Yeah.
talking about is an individual stylized way
Yes.
of
Of
writing.
expressing yourself, of expressing your ideas, vernacular. Yeah, I'm just like, it has a personality. It's like, does it have a personality or not? And I don't know how much personality an AI generated blog post could be. I mean, I can't imagine AI being able to do really targeted copywriting. I mean, I don't know. It has to evolve. I mean, it depends on what kind of information you put into it. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see, but a lot of writers are very nervous about it. But
I can imagine, because if
I'm kind of optimistic because I'm positive.
absolutely,
I
well,
I like the growth mindset, and so I just really kind of believe that there will always be work for people who have a good relationship with their audience, or the products, um, and have a voice and are good at what they do, and have ideas and able to express them, because it's the ideas. That's what you're selling, is the ideas. It's just you're writing about them.
right. Well, as an example, when I was a kid, I used to read Louis L'Amour, and he had a specific style of writing that
Yeah,
was unique to him. And
yeah,
so you could pick up another Western. He did Western novels, and you could
yeah,
pick up another Western novel by Gray, somebody I can't, by any of the other authors, and it came across differently because he had his own voice and he had
yeah,
his own way of thinking about it. But I look at it like, they're talking about buses being able to drive without drivers, and cars being able to move without being actually
yeah.
driven.
I'm still very on the fence and dubious about that. I really am. I'm not. I'm not one of these people who are standing behind with the pom poms and a cheerleader and saying, "Yeah, let's go in this direction."
Well, and there were when I was driving a bus, there were bus drivers that were saying, we're going to be out of a job in 5 years, or we're going to be out of a job in 10 years. And my contention is, no, the job may change, but they're still going to need a human being there
Yeah,
to monitor the activities of what's going on, not only where the bus is driving, but the activities that are happening on the bus. So
yeah,
your job may change a little bit, but it's still going to be there, because
yeah,
the human element. I don't know that and I suppose this is a conversation that would take a long time, but
yeah.
I
That's what I'm saying. This whole topic is like, that's a whole other broadcast.
yeah,
Because it's
but
big and it's going to change a lot. It's going to change. How that's going to change, I'm not sure yet, but it's going to change a lot. I mean,
yeah,
writers can use AI as a tool for them to get like started on research as a starting point. Like it can
yes,
be an entryway and a portal. So it can kind of be their virtual assistant, like set in that role. But I'm the one who has the ideas. I'm the one who comes up with the ideas and then puts that in writing in a way for that particular audience. So it's very specialized. And so that's still going to be in demand. So that's why so I'm looking at this thing of, it'll be very interesting to see how it evolves. It'll be very interesting how I will be able to use it. Yeah,
mhm.
I mean, it's different for everybody.
Well, and even right now, how you form the questions dictates the answer that you're going to.
Yes, absolutely. Absolute stuff. You need to know what questions are you asking, exactly. And you bring up a good point. You need to ask the right question.
Yes, and if you don't ask the right question, you're going to get a completely different answer.
Yeah,
And
you're not, I mean, especially if you've got a message that has to be targeted in a very specific way.
the only way I can think that AI could duplicate a human really is if you were to do um a conversation with the AI, and that you could then talk to it like you normally talk, and then
Right.
it could spit out copy that reflected how it is that you talk on an everyday basis, which is totally unique to you.
Yeah. Oh, I think a few, I mean, there's tons of articles on Medium about it, but I think somebody actually did that. They did a dialogue with um, uh, an
As
AI.
usual, I'm late.
Yeah, and it was a very interesting read. of how the AI would answer it, because the writer was trying to trip AI up, as like they were the robot, and the writer was a human being. So it's been, there's a lot of writing out there on it right now. Lots of people are chatting about it. So
Yeah,
it's
and
interesting.
I've also been told that just because it says it doesn't necessarily automatically make it so. It depends on the question that you ask, how you ask
Yeah.
it, and it can come up with things that are not quite accurate. So you got to be careful about that, just like everything else. But
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of like a starting point, and
Right.
you can take it as a starting point, but it still needs,
but it will never replace, like as an example, a novelist or a person who does blogs, because the experience, it cannot duplicate the experiences that you're writing your blog about. For instance, when you were talking about John Gotti, that was
right.
an experience that was totally yours, and you can't duplicate that by putting that in, like saying, okay, John Gotti at lunch, what would he be like? It
Right.
won't work that way. So I
Right.
think you're
Yeah.
safe, by the way.
Thank you, Kevin.
But I realize that there are times are changing. You and I have been around a little while now.
Yeah.
Times are changing
Times
so
are changing. Yeah.
and things are moving so quickly
Yeah.
that it's
I mean,
hard.
Easter should be interesting. I wonder what we're going to be boiling, dying, and hiding. I know that'll be eggs.
Eggs now are going to cost like $10 a dozen, kind of thing. And
Well, I was at Ralph's the other day, and they had a dozen organic. It was the organic, because I always like to do the organic with the eggs. That's just kind of how I am. I just and they were $8.99
for a dozen eggs.
organic. Yeah.
Right. Well, as you know, organic is a bit of a sales pitch all in and of itself. So.
Well, I kind of like to know that the animals were not treated horribly, and when I don't mind paying a little extra, but it was much. I mean, I usually would pay something around $5 for, like, 4 or 5 for a dozen eggs, and make sure that they were free range and organic, and so I feel like I'm not contributing to the.
Did you know that I used to be a chicken salesman?
No, I did not know that. So, what do you have to say about the avian flu? I mean, I read something saying that they're getting back up to production level, so maybe by Easter we'll see the price level down a little bit, but I don't know.
Oh, hopefully, and
Yeah.
I didn't do so much with the eggs, but I was it was a vertically integrated chicken company that I worked for.
Oh, okay.
And they killed 2.5 million birds a week, which is, you'd think that's a lot, wouldn't you? 2.5 million, but Tyson kills 25 million.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
a whole different thing.
I wouldn't want to be the person who has that job.
Yeah. Well, do you know there actually is a person who has that job?
I know that, and I don't mean no disrespect. I mean, I just mean I wouldn't want to do that. If I had to, let's just put it this way: if I could only eat what I had to hunt, I would definitely be a vegan then.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, if it came down to that, I would definitely. I couldn't do that.
If it doesn't have cellophane on it, I'm not going to eat it. So, because like a steak.
I'm not gonna shoot it. I'm not. Well, one, I'm not good with that. I've never done that before, so I'd probably just starve. So
I have to tell you, there were, because I was in the food business, I was in the restaurant business, and I sold chicken and stuff. One time I went to a cattle it was a hamburger plant, and they killed the cattle right there, and so we were standing right up by this little ramp that the cows were led up to, and then there was a guy with he had a device that had, this is going to take too long, but he had a device that you put a 22 into it and it shot into his brain and killed him instantly. But I was looking at the eyes of the cow next to the one that was being killed, and for those of you who do not believe they have a soul, that do not believe that they know what's going on, I'm here to tell you that's a lie. He was scared to death, and you could the fear in his eyes was remarkable. But anyway, we got less than a minute. We've got about a minute left. Anja Geitz is the author, or is the copywriter. She does all kinds of work for you. Hire her, please. Anja, ProWriter.com. And I've got about 30 seconds for you to wrap up anything you'd like to talk about, ma'am.
I just wanted to say what a pleasure it was being able to be on here with you today. I've had so many wonderful conversations with you, Kevin. Keep doing what you're doing. It's all positive.
And it's fun. I enjoy I enjoy learning about new things, and because all of us, and a writer can help us all do better at what we're trying to get done, which is put out there the information that we want people to know in the style that we want them to know it. And sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle.
It does. You need to be distinctive. So you need to find your voice, and we're here to help you.
I appreciate that. And so go to AnjaProWriter.com. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank our audience for being here. We're going to be back Monday at 3:00. And remember, be kind to one another, because each other is all we've got. We'll see you next time.
Bye.